Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Humanist Association of San Diego for our Sunday speaker series and weekly secular get-togethers. Today is a wonderful, wonderful day. Today, we are celebrating the start of National Hispanic Heritage Month with a special guest and a wonderful conversation. And to start off National Hispanic Heritage Month, I'd like to say, somos humanistas. We are humanists. And oftentimes the question of why are we focusing on Black humanist issues or LGBT humanist issues or issues of women in humanism, and now Latinx, Hispanic, or Latino or Latina, your preferred terminology, humanists. And it goes down to one particular self-evident fact. It's that we as humanists recognize and we celebrate and we actively strive to have the recognition that we are all connected. And there's this broader portrait of humanity and coming from the same source, developing together, diverging in a variety of ways. We have this wonderful benefit of different perspectives that come together to make us stronger in this portrait of humanity. And without the stories of each and every one of us, in each of our families, in each of our communities, no matter how different and divergent we might appear instantly from divergent ethnic demographics, sexual or gender demographics, et cetera, the portrait of humanity is incomplete without all of our stories. And this is something that as humanists, we are deeply committed to having realized a complete portrait of humanity. We learn from each other. And while different populations of individuals can be disproportionately affected by certain structural and conditional features in terms of politics, economics, implicit biases, we realize that while being connected to each other, we might be initially oblivious to certain things that we otherwise would be driven to immediately and actively get involved with to ameliorate these inequities. And so today, we are focusing on an area that we typically don't focus on, which is the Latinx perspective in humanism. And there isn't just a feature of, well, we're focusing on this now. There are as has been indicated by Eugen Navarro Rivera, PhD and senior fellow at the Institute for Humanist Studies, that 1/5 of Latinx Americans recently going non-religious. No, we notice deep cultural, humanistic traditions, and we notice secular luminaries such as Benito Juarez. Benito Juarez, of course, being the first fully indigenously blooded president of Mexico, fighting hard to take the power away from the church, to nationalize church properties, to make it so Mexican individuals who are service members cannot wear their service uniforms in religious parades, to fight actively so the church cannot exploit and take advantage of Mexican nationals and people in Mexico. And of course, the quote that if you don't know this, but those who know about Benito Juarez, the quote that Benito Juarez is most renowned for is inherently humanistic, and that is, entre los individuos como entre las naciones, el respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz, which is, between people and nations, peace begins at respecting the rights of others. And if there are a handful of humanistic phrases, I can't think of a better one. And looking at this, we also see the effect of the church and the pernicious effects of the church going back 500 years. An individual in the court of Carlos V came up with the theological reason for the subjugation of people in the quote unquote new world and the quote unquote enlightening the quote noble savage. And it was this, that the Bible gave Christians the right and responsibility to go and convert people, and certain people were just not as smart biologically as white Christians from Europe were. So the Catholics in Spain had the duty to go and convert and rule. And from thenceforward, we see the Catholic Church actively ruining the lives of people in South, Central, and North America. Indigenous people who had their culture, their histories, and their lives snuffed out for the sake of church supremacy. Additionally, while we have a special guest today from the Hispanic American Freethinkers, and we might only think of North America and maybe Central America, we also have to recognize that humanism and atheism and secularism are alive and well all throughout the Western Hemisphere, with organizations doing incredible things in Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Guatemala, Peru, et cetera, And we also look, as I said earlier, at the influence of the church and the pernicious influence of the church as is manifest in the Western Hemisphere. And we see that in Texas, church-minded individuals nearly destroying reproductive freedom in Texas through State Bill 8, the fetal heartbeat law. And in the same week that the state of Texas propels reproductive freedom back generations, we see something amazing just across our southern border with the Supreme Court of Mexico. And the same week that Texas abrogates reproductive freedom, generations of struggle for reproductive freedom, the Supreme Court of Mexico, in a sweeping decision, decriminalizes abortion in Mexico. And so we have a lot to talk about. In my intros, I always give a lot of little bits of information because oftentimes we have a conversation. This is signposting it so you guys are ready to chat. And there's one thing that I know about humanists, and it's that we are people that like to talk. And we're a people that like to talk who are fiercely committed to human rights, fiercely committed to getting together, and fiercely committed to working together to make this world a better place. My slogan for humanism has long been, we are humanists and we are here to help. And today with our special guest, David Tamayo, the founder and president of Hispanic American Freethinkers, and my distinguished co-host, Michelle Lagos Young, I think today we are going to encapsulate and give a contagious, enthusiastic embodiment to our slogan, Estamos humanistas, no somos humanistas y estamos para asistirles. We are humanists and we are here to help. So Michelle, I'd like to hand this meeting over to you. Thank you so much everyone for being here.
Hello, thank you so much, Jason, for the introduction to this whole conversation and this whole interview that we're going to be having today. I am incredibly excited. I'm going to be introducing in a moment David Tamayo. He is the founder and president of Hispanic American Freethinkers. This conversation that we're going to have is going to be a part of a very broad topic, because when we talk about Hispanic and Latinx people, we're talking about Hispanic, Latinx, Indigenous people in all of the Americas. And in this conversation, we're pulling it more into that secular humanist context, focusing on the United States, the Hispanic experience in more of a secular humanist context. I am a communications specialist. I have a graduate degree in strategic communications, and I study it constantly, because communications isn't just the word, what I'm speaking. It's not just writing. It's also body language. It's neurology. It's everything that encompasses being a human. And in that, I think that language is incredibly important. That's why we're here, so we can have those conversations, so that we can do the storytelling and we can communicate with each other and perhaps find common ground, or find something that you or I did not previously know about. First of all, I wanted to share a little bit of information and lay some foundation for the conversations that we're about to have. When it comes to Hispanic Americans in the United States, Pew Research showed that in 2020, there were 61 million Hispanic Americans in the United States. And this very likely does not include people who are undocumented, because undocumented peoples tend to not fill out these types of surveys. 61 million people. I think you all know that the Hispanic dysphoria is incredibly vast. We have people from Central America, we have people from South America, we have indigenous people from the Canadas, all over the United States, and all of us share common ancestry. We all share common genetics. In laying this foundation, I'm going to talk a little bit about some vocabulary. Again, I'm a communication specialist. I want to make sure that we're talking in the same language before we start having that conversation. There's some debate conversations about the concept of Hispanic, Latin, and Latinx. So for this conversation, really, Hispanic refers to people who speak Spanish and who are descendants of those of Spanish-speaking countries. Latin refers more to geography. Specific people of Latin America include Central America, South America, the Caribbean. So we can have people that are Black, white, indigenous, Asian, and it doesn't matter. We're all technically Hispanic because we come, or all technically Latin because we come from those different regions and countries. And the Latinx, the word Latinx, is very simply a person of a Latin American origin and descent. Whatever term you prefer to use, Hispanic, Latin, Latina, Latino, Latinx, is perfectly acceptable in this conversation. We're not here to try to create division or to try to make sure that we're promoting one term over the other. These are terms that in our communities are used sometimes interchangeably, and it is acceptable because it's what the personal understanding is. This next part, pretty sure I'm preaching to the choir, but since we're recording this, and hopefully if people don't know the terms humanist and secular, humanism with regards to, in particular to the belief of, humanism is in particular to the beliefs of humans, I'm gonna get this right, with regard to the belief that humanity is capable of morality and self-fulfillment without a belief in God. Secular is the belief that humanity is capable of morality and self-fulfillment without a belief in God. So now we have secular humanists. Similar, very, very similar. The belief that humanity is capable of morality and self-fulfillment without a belief in God. So what we're talking about right now is the experience of Hispanic American people, Latinx people in the United States that have let go of a belief that tends to be engraved in our cultural understanding from childhood. And so for some, not everyone, because some people are third, fourth generation atheists or humanists, which I am in awe of, because those are people whose parents were ahead of the curve, in my opinion. But as I said, the Latin and Hispanic experience in the United States is vast. we can't say that there is just one experience. But what we can do is have conversations with people who have had different experiences, who bring in their own perspective, who do advocacy in their neighborhoods and in their communities. And today, the person that we're bringing in is David Tamayo. David is the founder and president of Hispanic American Freethinkers. It was founded in 2010. HaFree is the first and only national Latin 501c3 of its kind. It focuses on promoting education and critical thinking. As a secular activist, he was vice president of the Reason Rally, which was held June 4th, 2016. So it was the 2016 Reason Rally, and it was at the Lincoln Memorial. He was the vice president for this, at the time, for the organization. And I love the quote for the Reason Rally: a celebration of fact-driven public policy, the value of critical thinking, and the voting power of secular Americans. Concentrating on voting power, at least for me, because that's how we go from communication and communicating with each other to then taking a stance and making our voice heard at a political and public level. So David is also the former host of the TV show Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century. And I have not seen any of those episodes, but I really look forward to seeing those. It was the founding board of, he was on the founding board of directors for Camp Quest Chesapeake and host of Contrapuntos.
Very good.
Switch to my Spanish, thank you. Contrapuntos podcast. Debates with preachers, science deniers, and other interesting personalities in Spanish. And I love the focus of Spanish because there's sometimes where the secular community, we might forget that there are some people that don't know or have not learned English yet. And so getting that information out there at a bilingual level is really important. The concept of atheism, which here it is not a bad word, just letting you know, atheism is not a bad word here, even though in some cases it might be. It's really just the ability to criticize religion, to challenge the concepts by a rational, non-religious, educated viewpoint. And so if you'd like to use the word atheism in this group, we are perfectly happy with it as well. And one of the things that I have heard, David, in one of your conversations is the idea that truth, facts, begs questioning. Anytime that there is a fact in front of you, it is open to you're open to be skeptical about it and to ask questions about it. David was also the producer of Dr. Hector Avalos, his only audiobook, Se Puede Saber Si Dios Existe, translated to Can It Be Known If God Exists? And Hector Avalos, will be talking about him more because he is really a silent hero in the sciences here in the United States. We'll definitely be talking about him. He's also one of David's, one of David's mentors. David is currently the member in the board of directors for Freedom from Religion Foundation. And together with the Secular Alliance, they've actually created the Hector Avalos Memorial Scholarship, and it's given out to deserving students each year. In the non-secular activist life, because it's not just about being secular, it's also about what you're giving back to the community. He's a chief information officer for DCS Corporation, which is a large aerospace engineering employee-owned company in Washington, D.C. We've talked in these rooms about employee-owned companies, and that's definitely something that we'll be talking about, David. David holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from George Washington University, a master's of science in management and information technology from the University of Virginia. And his publications, I have to say, I have enjoyed reading several of his publications. They include Will Artificial Intelligence Destroy Humanity? On Artificial Intelligence and Ethics, The Future of the Military Industry, The Great CIO Myth, What Can I Learn from the Defense Industry, CIO? These are all great topics, and it goes to show that being Hispanic isn't just about being a Hispanic person. We give to the community in vast, vast ways. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on David Tamayo. And David, I'm going to actually ask you to introduce yourself with my very first question to you. And the reason I'm asking this question is because I want to have people understand your experience. So will you first share with us what your journey was into going from a very religious household to then finding secularism and delving as deeply as you have in politics, in technology, in activism, and everything that you do? Tell us your story and your background, please.
I'm not sure. Thank you for the introduction. I'm not sure how fun that'll be, but I do come from, I'm immigrant. My dad moved from Colombia to New England when the United States used to have factories. Way before most of you were born, except Margaret and I were the only ones that were born by then. So very religious family, very, family of priests and nuns and things of the sort. But my parents were not very educated, but they always encouraged us to school. My dad always said, listen, so long as you're in school, I promise you that I will give you food and shelter and you'll have a place to stay. So go to school, become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, whatever. And so that's how we got started. Every summer while I was in high school, in junior high and in high school, I took summer classes with a program called Upper Bound in Rhode Island College. This was a program for economically and socially disadvantaged kids. And by the way, there is an actress that some of you may know. Her name is Viola Davis. She and I were classmates in Upper Bound and in high school. Her sister Dolores was my best friend throughout, and I learned a lot of the English that I speak today, for good or for worse. I learned from Dolores and from Viola. I still remember one question. One time I went to Dolores and I said, Dolores, I don't know what this word means. And she said, what's the word? I said, I think lust was the word. And she said, if it weren't because I'm Black, I'd be blushing right now because I don't know how to explain this to you. So it was, in that sense, it was good. The promoting of education. I went to college, to Washington, D.C., where I continued to go to school, learning science. I was pre-med. I got accepted to medical school. I got accepted to computer science. And finally decided that I wasn't going to be a doctor like I've always wanted. I was going to go into robotics, artificial intelligence, and that kind of stuff. And of course, my mom cried for 9 months because, what Latino mother doesn't want their son to be a doctor? Although it was the best decision I could have made. I think doctors have it pretty rough nowadays with insurance. So, and then one day, so I ended up marrying my wife, who was an atheist, and so I was very religious. She was an atheist, and the idea is, okay, how are we going to make this work? And she said, well, don't wake me up on Sundays to go to church. You can take our son if you want. And so, you know, when my son in the evenings would come and say, hey, Dad, can I have your blessing? I would go, okay, en el nombre del Padre, del Hijo, del Espíritu Santo. And my wife would go, in the name of Hypatia, 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 because if it weren't for these two hands, you're not going to have food and shelter and any of that. So because of me. And my son would just kind of laugh it off. Well, my son went off to college kind of early. He skipped a few grades, smart kid. He went off to college at 16, and I kept bugging him about church. And he said, well, Dad, I'm an agnostic. And what the hell is an agnostic? I literally had to go look that up in the dictionary. And that was kind of it. And so I kept reading a lot about science. And then eventually, one day, kind of the light bulb came on. I was at the ripe age of 43 when I realized that I've been conned my entire life. And I was, you know, they talk about the angry atheist. Yeah, that was me. I was angry at myself. How could you be so stupid? You know, it took me a while to get over that. And then I thought, you know, I'm going to start going to groups. And if I can ever take someone away from the church, I will. And well, that's how we started doing some meetups, and before we know it, we ended up with the Hispanic American Freethinkers as a national group, and lots of stories in all of that. But I really don't want to take up all the time. But before I go on, there is one thing I want to do, and we talked a little bit about this before. You know, if you're a white person and you criticize the culture of an Asian person, what do they call you? A racist, right? So this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to deputize anyone that is watching this or that is participating or watches later as Hispanic. So you're now Hispanics, and that means you can ask any question. There's no judgment. You're not going to be judged in any way. I've had people ask me, "Oh, you were born in Colombia. What part of Mexico is that?" Because, you know, there are people that are truly ignorant of geography and other things. So, you know, I'd like to, before we talk about the whole thing or different topics, if it's okay with you, Michelle, I'd like to mention a few statistics.
Let's do it.
On Hispanics, just so we can see the scope of what we're talking about over here. So it was already mentioned that we're communities. Hispanics is a community of communities. And, you know, they needed a term to sort of group everybody together. We all love to group people together. And so we had throughout the 20th century, you have Hispanics being used. It's in forms for the IRS and census and all of that. And then Latinos and Latin and Latinx and all of that. And I tell people, look, I don't care what you call me, so long as you call me. And so long as you bring me into the table, I don't care how you refer to me. But in general, and even some people, you mentioned Native Americans being the same people. And this is like literally is. If you take the DNA from Native Americans from the US, from Oklahoma, and Native Americans from Guatemala, is the same DNA. They're the same people. But of course, you know, if you're from Guatemala, you can't check the Native American box in your census form. You have to check Latin America or Hispanic or something like that. So Hispanics are born both in the United States for many generations, as well as newly immigrated people. And so just to put things of how long have Hispanics been, you know, you hear a lot, hey, go back to your country. Well, in the 1500s, there were already Hispanics in the United States. In the 1500s, this is before the English arrived in 1609. And even in 1775, there were Spanish ships anchored and exploring Alaska. And then in 1783, which is 8 years after the US became an independent country, Spain held claim to half of what today is the continental United States. So you mentioned there, you know, population-wise, we're over 60 million people. That's about 19% of the US population. Now, just to put in perspective, think Blacks in the United States are 13% of the population. So we're 19, 13, Asians, 5%. And Jews in the United States, they're a little bit over 2%. You know, we can certainly agree that that the Hispanics are definitely the largest minority group in the United States. Now, 3 out of the 4 most populous states in the United States came from Mexico. So that's Florida, Texas, and California. They came from Mexico originally. And today, half the Hispanics, so over 30 million, are millennials, Generation Z. The median age is 27 years old versus the general population, which is 37. So we have a very young population. And we are a loving people, so they tend to reproduce far too much, probably. So another thing is more people speak Spanish in the United States than any other country in the world except for Mexico. And so that's astonishing that there are more Spanish speakers in the United States than in Colombia, Venezuela, or Chile, or even Spain. So why should we care? Why should we care about all this? It's because by 2050, Hispanic population is projected to be over 100 million people. So, we want those 100 million people to be educated, to be able to take, and they're young, so they better get training and all of that. So when we get old, they take care of us. And with science-based medicine instead of magic, but a mind-blowing 73,000 Hispanics in the US turned 18 every month. That's one Hispanic every 30 seconds turns 18. What I hear is, cha-ching, those are votes. We need to get those people to vote. So I wanted to give an idea of the numbers so that we know what we're talking about here is big. When we say, oh, we're not talking about the Hispanics or the Latinx people in Latin America, in South America, really, we're still talking a lot of people over here, bigger than any other country except for Mexico. So anyway, I talk a lot. Interrupt me always, please.
No, that's great information. And I thank you for putting in that foundation. I'm big about making sure that we have a foundation for what we're talking about. So when we're talking about those people in the United States, this was you shared with us a little bit about your experience with finding, or rather understanding sciences and critical thinking better, which led you to no longer accepting religion. In your experiences with talking to other Hispanic peoples throughout the United States, have you found that being a similar experience for people who are coming to a more secular understanding?
There are a lot of reasons why people become secular, why they abandon religion. Some, I would almost argue that is genetic. My wife, for instance, she lost religion when she was in first grade, and because a nun slapped her when she questioned the whole apple story of Adam and Eve and the snake talking. And she responded to the nun, look, any religion that requires slapping can't be true. And she was kicked out of school for that. And so that was a good thing. But for a lot of people, it's discontent because they're mistreated, et cetera. With Hispanics, there's something very unique and kind of to the culture. A lot of the Hispanics that I've encountered that are atheists, they're in secret. They're secret. They're not telling anyone in the family and everything. And when you talk to say like Mormons and others, because they're getting kicked out of their houses or somehow being abused, right? Now with the Hispanics, the number one reason that I probably have heard is, I don't want to hurt my grandma's feelings. I don't want to hurt my mom's feelings. They do it out of love for they keep it as a secret out of love for their family. More and more statistic. We were talking about the Catholic Church and all of that. Today, the Catholic Church doesn't have as much influence in the United States as we may think. Only half the people are Catholic. Only half the Hispanics are Catholic. The rest are Mormons, are Pentecostals. They're all kinds of religions. But I can tell you one thing: every single religion out there is targeting Hispanics to bring them into the fold. Because when you're a virus, you go after the weak, right? When you're a lion, you go after the gazelle that is the weakest. And how are they the weakest? Well, when it comes to education, we are weak. When it comes to religiosity, where the religion has melted into our culture to the point that if you question religion, you're questioning culture, you're questioning your family, you're a goddamn traitor. And how it gets controlled. So we, I see it that that lack of education creates poverty. That poverty creates a need to have something to hang on to, and boom, there is the church. I mean, there is a reason the church, a lot of church people go to hospitals to, go visit and have deathbed conversions because they're going after the weak. They're going after, the people that are in most need. And so when I look around near my office, I'm not exaggerating, within 3 blocks of my office, if you go around in a circle from my office, there are about 16 churches from all denominations. And I walk by there and I see it says clases de inglés, English classes, citizen classes, free babysitting. So, okay, you're in need. You're a poor Hispanic without a lot of education. You got to do work 2 jobs. And wow, childcare for free. Here are my babies. You go and you check it out. It seems fine. They're not abusive to the kids or anything, except they're brainwashing those little kids since the beginning. And before you know it, well, another statistic, over 200,000 Hispanics have converted to Islam in the United States. So they go from, a crappy religion to a crappier religion, where, women are abused and where the psychological trauma that is created, the threat of hell and all of that creates nightmares on kids. So that is, we are right now we're the prey that everyone wants. We're the gazelle, the chicken nugget of the jungle that everyone wants to come and eat. And so one of the things that as free thinkers that we are as humanists is we need to help out those people by all means through education, through conversations, and through trying to change society as itself. The slogan of Hispanic American free thinkers is advancing Latino culture through science and reason. And that is because a lot of people look at culture as a sacred cow. Even a lot of atheists, a lot of them, they're like, oh yeah, we can go and pounce on religion, but oh, let's not pounce on culture. And culture and religion are exactly the same thing. Hey, how do you get people to go die for a flag? Is under the banner of patriotism is culture. That's if you can get people to kill themselves or to go fight to the death, you can manipulate a lot of people that way. And so I would argue that there are cultures or aspects of cultures that are better than others. And I would say our Western culture here, for example, is far better to women than the culture in Africa where they cut the clitoris of young girls, or the culture of Afghanistan and some of these countries where women have to cover and be abused and all of those things. So, and does that mean that we can't criticize ours or that we don't have anywhere to go from here? Heck, we got tons, lots of work to be done still. But yeah, within our own cultures, in Latino culture, we are, it's a layers of culture. And so anyway, that's
and of course, you're talking about the more fundamentalist groups of Islam, and in some African cultures, the country of Africa, there are some cultures in there that still have these understandings of oppressing women to a certain degree, and it's not universal, obviously, through the religion, but there are every religion has their fundamentalist sect, as it were. I really like the comparison that you made to gazelles, and I want to make sure that is not an offensive thing, because I do a lot of research for South American culture in Peru specifically. My family is from my father's side of the family is from Mexico, and my mother's side of the family is from Peru. I was raised with my Peruvian grandmother, so I was raised with a lot of that Peruvian heritage and culture. The reason I bring this up is we can actually trace in that region of South America the time where the governments created a single spiritual belief, and how they were able to use that to then expand their empire. The Wadi people in Peru and Bolivia, those areas there, they took all of the spiritual belief of the indigenous people that lived there, they combined it into one, and then they used it to build their empire, which then became the unified rulers under the Incas, which were the rulers of the Quechua and a couple of other people. So when we say easy pickings, it's not because we're trying to say that Hispanic or Latinx people are ignorant or are stupid. Instead, there is a level of ingrained ignorance that we're taught from a very young age, and for generations. This is generational, that we're taught to believe and accept these religious ideologies.
And not even
other,
just, I was going to add to that, that there's not just that, but it has to do, it's the Spanish, is the Spanish heritage that we got. This caste of different people, where white is better than the Indians. Till this day, in a lot of Latin America, an insult to somebody is to call them an Indian. Este indio. The problem is that this creates it creates this class. And I'll give you an example, something I mentioned to you before. Some of the worst enemies we have as Hispanics in the United States are Hispanics themselves. Two Hispanics meet. Hey, hola, ¿cómo estás? The first thing they ask is, ¿de dónde eres? Where are you from? Immediately, okay, oh, I'm from Argentina and you're from Guatemala. El Indio, and I'm, more European, and it's already that kind of crap. But you still see it today. And an example I told Michelle a couple of days ago is I have a couple of ladies that come, two sisters that come to clean my house every week. And they work, they clean also the offices, where in the building where I work. And I recommended somebody at work. His name is John. And so, when they come to me, they're like, hey, hi, David, ¿cómo estás? And they very, very, very equals, and this is great, But anytime that Mr. John, so he's Mr. John, I'm just plain old David. And anytime that Mr. John needs to move his dates, they'll give him priority over me, even though I am at work John's supervisor of the supervisor of the supervisor. So I'm a few steps above him at work. In their eyes, he is more than I am because he's white, American, gringo. And so and so we're doing it to ourselves. It's ourselves. I see a lot of, with some of the more strong religions, like Pentecostals here in the DC area, they take out the kids at 16 out of school. A lot of them, especially the girls, because they say, no, women shouldn't be educated. Women needs to be at home, cleaning, cooking, and making as many babies as God can send you. And so, the good thing is that until about 3 or 4 years ago, the high school dropout rate in the United States was about half. So Hispanics were about 50% chance that they were going to drop out of high school. The good news is that now that number has gone up high, so it's only now a dropout rate of 30%. And now they're going to college, right? So Hispanics are starting to go to college. The problem is they go to college and get a 2-year degree, which typically is not that good, or they drop out after 2 years and now they have college debt without a college degree. Or, and I know I'm going to get some people pissed off about this, they go and they get a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree even in sociology or psychology, and they stop. And what are you qualified to do with a bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology or anthropology or any of those things? Nothing that's going to pay you anything, because those fields are only worthwhile if you go up to the master's and to a graduate level, master's and PhD levels. And so when we look at education in the United States and you look at how many PhDs are Hispanic out there, it's a desert. There's nothing in there. When you look at how many Hispanic women mathematicians in the PhD program we have, I'd be willing to cut the fingers in my hand if there are any in there, because and so scholarships that are set up, and a lot of groups like, hey, we're going to put some scholarships to attract Hispanics into these fields. They're going empty. No one's applying to them because the bases are not there. You need to take care of the bases. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You got to take care of that first. So that's the biggest problem. If you don't get education is the way of getting out of poverty. Education is the way to lose religion. Education solves so many things. And yet this is, we make it really, really costly to get an education in this country, which makes you wonder, why don't we have free education if we want a nation of educated people? If we want to be the most educated nation in the world so we can compete with the whole planet, at a good level, why do we make it so difficult and tough? And of course, a lot of Hispanic live in poor neighborhoods or bad neighborhoods. I came from a very poor, very bad neighborhood. And so from my graduating class of 152, I think 5 of us went to college. And, so it perpetuates the thing. I'm the only one in my family that has left Rhode Island, the place where we grew up. My parents moved there, and that's it. They never moved away. And so most people don't move a lot, and in that sense, and especially for an education. And so I tell people, I go speak to a lot of high schools with the kids in teaching them critical thinking classes, which, by the way, I encourage all of you to do. This is something we need to do, is go volunteer as a tutor, volunteer and what I do is I go to the different high schools and I tell them, I want to teach some class on critical thinking. And I say, well, who are you? Oh, I'm president of Hispanic American Freethinkers. Believe it or not, most principals don't even know what the freethinker is. I've had one out of like 15 that actually went and looked it up, and he said, hey, whoa, let's talk about this before you talk to the kids. And then he let me talk to the kids. Education was my savior. Education is what got me out. And I think the more educated people get, the chances, I'm not saying that you're going to convert. There are plenty of doctors and plenty of professionals and educated people that are still believers, but I think it'll go in the lighter side. And we see the more educated people are, how they vote. It's no secret. If you look at college educated people at the last elections, how they voted versus people that barely have a high school education, you can see that it has an effect in our society. And Hispanics are no different when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think it's so important to talk about the solutions as well. Like, how do we move forward? How do we try to instill that critical thinking? And it's just what you're doing right now by going out and talking to those schools. My next question to you is, how do we talk to the racist grandparent, the racist uncle, the person in our family that is the stereotype, that is that trope of they're a beautiful person. I personally had a grandmother who everyone loved. She was an absolutely beautiful person, but she had a racist streak in her. She was raised in Peru during a time when there were Japanese and Chinese immigrants coming into Peru, and so there was this delineation. And then she also lived through the LA riots, and so she then learned a different type of racism over time. Before she passed away, she, having millennial and generation Z grandparents, they helped her along. But what are your recommendations for a Latin American Hispanic person who is either new to secularism or who is still in the closet? How do they talk to a grandparent or a family member about these things?
And that's a great question. I think that there is when I came out to my parents as atheist, knowing that they came from extremely religious. I mean, my mom prays the rosary every single day. She goes to church all the time. We had a big fight during COVID because she wanted to continue going to church. And I had, my brothers are a little bit less religious. than she is. And so they agreed to make sure that she wasn't going to go to church. And they introduced her to Zoom. And of course, she went to church via Zoom. So she's an expert at Zoom. I've often, and so this again might be controversial, I've often thought the old will die. Let's not waste our energy and time on them. And the chances are that you're going to convert or have somebody change their mind after 50, 60, 70 years of feeling one way or the other for no good reason. We know racism is not based on logic. And so somebody said, if you came into something, a bad belief without evidence, what makes you think that evidence is going to sort of take it away for bad reasons, So I've concentrated a lot in the young, especially on teenagers, because, the teenagers are the perfect skeptic. They are starting to question their parents, starting to question everything. And then you give them the tools to be a good skeptic. As Carl Sagan used to see, the baloney detector. You have them question respectfully and question their own parents and their preachers and everyone, teach them the Socratic method. And just ask questions. So that way you're not telling anyone, just ask the tough questions and show them that, that this is, and there will be people, I know children that have changed the minds of the parents, not just on religion, but on smoking, on other things, right? And so I usually take it that when I told my parents, I took it very slowly. And my mom, for instance, called me and says, hi, did you go to on a Sunday? Did you go to church today? No, Mom. And she's like, did you go last Sunday? No, Mom. Why didn't you go to church? I'm so worried about you. Oh, your soul is in danger. You need to go to church. And I said, Mom, when I was a kid, you told me that working was praying. Whenever my dad couldn't go to church on Sunday because he was working, he worked pretty hard. My mom says, well, working is praying. And I said, so instead of me going to church and putting my hands and praying, I actually go help some lady across the street that needed help in moving. And so I helped her. And so every Sunday I find an hour or two to go help out somebody. And so I'm actually praying by doing this. And she bought that for a little while, and then she kept at it until one day she point blank asked me, do you believe in God? And we got into it. And of course she cried and I said, look, I'm the same exact guy when I believed, in the sense that I help out people that need it. I give to charity. I'm the good guy that you've always admired. I study hard, I work hard, I'm honest, and all of the things that we consider someone to be a good person. That nothing has changed. It's just to believe in this deity. And of course, what's the first thing they blame? My wife. Oh, that woman, she's always been atheist. She's the one, even though she got married in the church with me and all of that. But no, in fact, my wife and I never talked about religion until one day I came to her and I said, I got something to tell you. I think I'm an atheist also. And she's like, oh, good for you. That was it. A lot of like, wah, wah, wah. But so in that sense, some of my brothers and sisters, I could tell that they were making sure that I was never alone with their kids. Maybe, how you would treat a pedophile, I guess. And so that hurt a lot. And, but any chance I had for the kids to talk to me alone, especially as they became teenagers, and parents couldn't keep them away from Facebook, and they would go into Facebook and try to convince me about abortion, about this, about that. And we had big, long conversations with my nieces and nephews, most of them which started dropping religion, most of them which became religion light, and they don't go to church. And they may claim they believe in God, but they don't. That's just it. And so you can see the generational change. And my parents, my mom and dad, they still go to church a lot. I don't give my parents any money. They're poor. And I don't give them any money because they give it to the church. So if they need something, if the dishwasher broke or they need a vacuum, then, we buy them the stuff. Otherwise, if I give them $500, they'll give $450 to the church, and nothing is solved. And heck, the last thing I want to do is give money to the church so they can keep paying for those lawsuits they keep losing on treatment of children. So anyway, I don't know if that answered the question, but
no, it's beautiful. It's a great answer, because I think you're very, very right in having those conversations in a loving manner. I didn't read who wrote that in chat, but I think that's so right. I always say there are bad actors in society, period. It doesn't matter what your ethnic background is. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. If you are a person that's going to exploit others, you're going to do it regardless of where you are. And unfortunately, what history has been showing us is that it is very easy to exploit people through and with religion. Because you and I are both into statistics, one of the things that I've pulled up is that in the United States, 15%, more than 15% of Hispanics are living at the poverty rate. Yeah. If we have 61 million people, Hispanic people in the United States, that is, I can't do quick math in my head, 7-ish million people living in poverty, at least 7 million people living in poverty that are Hispanic. And a lot of those people are very, very religious, giving their money to an organization, which their religious organization of choice, which my spouse, who is an atheist, and I married an atheist, but he never spoke about it. Very similar to your situation, where I finally came out and said, "Hey, I think I'm atheist," and he goes, "Okay." Because
good for you.
Yeah, good for you. Good, awesome. Because he never talked to me about religion. It was just a known thing. I was very religious. He was not. When it comes to, you talked about deathbed conversions. When I see those topics of deathbed conversions, it really has to do with people donating and leaving trusts for those religions, and also having a sense of guilt tripping those people that are about to die. Yes. They are maybe months, days, or hours away from death, and instead of giving them a peaceful transition, they are being badgered. And I know that you have had some experience witnessing that type of people attempting to do that.
I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but I had a very good friend named Clarence, who lived a very modest life, even though he was a multimillionaire. I mean, after I died, I learned that he had maybe about $10 million and properties and all of that. And when he was dying, he had cancer. And so I visited him a lot, and we were friends and good friends and everything. And as he was, then he didn't go to church normally. He believed in God, and it was registered with the local church. And the pastor showed up one day and said, "Hey, Clarence, I'm sorry, this and that, and let's pray." And then towards the end said, "You can't take it with you, right? All that money you've accumulated and you have more than plenty to give. Look, the church needs 500 chairs. And would you please buy the church 500 chairs before you die?" And I was there, and Clarence looked at the picture and says, "Look at me. I'm dying, but that doesn't mean I'm an idiot. You're getting one chair." And gave him one chair. So preacher was not very happy with that. But I thought it was great. He left it to his family, left it to his loved ones, left the money to that. But yes, with more recently with Hector Avalos, a friend of mine, he was one of the people that I asked to be part of the board of directors of Hispanic American Freethinkers, and he said no. flat out no, because he was already too busy, and he was kind of famous at the time. Hector had stopped Iowa State University from putting intelligent design in the science curriculum that a professor wanted to put in there, and he got about 135 professors to sign a letter saying that they would resign if that went through, and so he was attacked by many people in many places, but he was an example, a great example for the Hispanic community. He came from very humble beginnings, very poor and everything, and he was Pentecostal. He was a child preacher in the corners and all of that, and he wanted to learn more and more about God, and he kept reading the Bible. He went to college, school, ended up at Harvard, well, what they say, what I've been called before, you're overeducated. And so he became one of those overeducated people and realized that this was the biggest con in humanity, religion. And, you get to promise everything after you die, when you can't do anything about it, when you can't question it, when you can't go to court, when you can't demonstrate or prove that anything is false. Just, is the best. If I was not an ethical person, that's what I would do. How many of us think that some of these preachers that have private jets and mansions and all of that are really interested in the Word of God? And no, it's just con men that are really good at what they do, and people want to believe, and they're there to make them believe and separate them from their money. So that is. If we can, through education, we can soften that, we can eliminate a lot of that. And then the money stops flowing into the churches. That money stops. I don't care if people believe in God, but I don't want them to give none of that $78 billion that churches get in the United States every year. That $78 billion could be used for healthcare, for paving the streets, for taking care of, how is the society good or bad is how we treat the elderly, and we treat our elderly pretty bad. Childcare, providing some of the basic necessities, but not providing those necessities keeps the poor people poor, and it keeps that cycle going. And worse, you get them to vote against their own interest. And so it really, I go knock on doors during elections, and I try to convince people to not vote against their own personal self-interest, to think of the long term. And a lot of them are convinced that, hey, if I vote like those bad people, then I can become like one of them. And there are people that vote against multi-billionaires getting taxed because they think that someday they're going to be them, that one day they're going to be billionaires. No, you're not, for a thousand reasons. But that's how it goes.
And then what I love that you mentioned that is the belief that, well, someday I'm going to be a billionaire. But do you really want to be that type of billionaire? If you do make a lot of money, if you do happen to be one of the lucky ones who's able to surpass by far the circumstances that you were born into, do you really want to get there by exploiting your brothers, your sisters, the communities that you came from?
I mean, that money comes from somewhere, right?
It does.
I mean, I remember reading an economics book where they a lot of businesses target the poorest of communities, like the check cashing places, for instance. And it's because they say, how many billions of dollars in drug money come out of those neighborhoods, and how many billions of dollars come out in all kinds of things. The money's there. It's just that it gets taken. It's very expensive to be poor. I mean, if anyone's interested in that topic, you can look up the price of being poor, and it costs more to be poor than it is to have money. And when I tell some of these people, of course, some of these people don't understand how big a billion actually is. And I tell them, okay, if you had $1 billion, how many, and you spend $1 million every year, how long and how fast can you spend that money? In how many years? They'll tell you, 50 years, 100 years. No, 1,000 years. It'll take you 1,000 years of spending $1 million. So anyway, the idea here is in getting people to learn and understand. And so when I go to the schools and talk to the kids, we tell them exactly that. We said, the truth is not afraid to be questioned. And that is the reason why when you go to church, the preacher will gives you a sermon and then says, here's, give the donation now. While when you're in school, a professor, a teacher will say, any questions, please, begging for questions, because that's how you learn things. That's actually knowledge. The other one is indoctrination. And people need to learn the difference. And so the good thing is I make friends with a lot of the teachers. And I tell the teachers, look, I'm not going to talk about politics or religion because those are the sacred cows they don't want you to talk about in high school to kids. But you know what? There's a lot of ways to do things. You show them, you get some kid that will say, we talk about ghosts. Well, the ghost exists. And you'd be amazed how many people believe ghosts exist. And you say, okay, well, how can we tell? And, I've seen people on TV with the little radio things and antennas. Okay, and how do you know that those things actually do anything or that they actually detect ghosts? Maybe they're detecting, the air conditioner coming on. Maybe they're detecting other things that we don't know. Maybe, radio frequency from a walkie-talkie from far away. And I said, look, if it's true, you want to question it the more. Scientists didn't discover one thing and say, we discovered fire and now we're not going to try anything else. No, you keep going and build on that. And if it's true, then it's great. But otherwise, taking somebody's word for it is really the idea of a con man. That's how you get conned. So it's those classes. We for a while we had kits that we used to send out to other people that were interested in doing these topics they could talk about. You show them a lot of times a kid will say, well, if I see it, I believe it. I said, no. And so we show them a magic trick where they see something and they shouldn't believe it. We do an ESP one, which is really fun. I'll just tell you quick. I grab one of their peers, one of their students, and I tell them, I'm going to do something and you'll know what it is. And so I have one kid write a number between 1 and 5 in the blackboard, and the other kid facing away. I put my hands like this and I'm going to, through ESP, through telepathy, I'm going to send it. And of course, what I do is I tap the finger 3 times. And the kid goes, oh, it's the number 3. And they go, oh my God, how did you do that? And say, but you saw it. I had kids filming it. So I can show my parents how you do telepathy. And didn't I tell you at the beginning of the class that there's no such thing as magic? There's no such thing as supernatural stuff. Usually I don't say there isn't. I say it hasn't been yet demonstrated. So that way, use the proper thing so they know, okay, look, if you want to prove that ghosts exist, you're going to win a Nobel Prize. So do it the right way. There's a scientific method that will be generally accepted and replicated. So
testable and repeatable, definitely.
Exactly. And that's how science moves. And that's why it makes me so sad to see people not wanting to take the vaccine, for instance, refusing to take the vaccine. And when I encounter some of these people, I tell them, okay, show me how many people right now are in the hospital because the vaccine made them sick versus how many people are actually dying for not taking the vaccine and how many die every day. And it's obvious. Of course, it depends on what TV channels you tend to watch that you tend to believe such crap. But what are you going to do, right?
Well, so right now, talking, you brought up the pandemic, and that actually is a perfect segue to what I wanted to talk about next. I like looking at culture and religion through an evolutionary standpoint. Mm-hmm. And if we look at religion as it through the evolution of time, we find that after every major global event where there has been mass death, there is shortly after an upswing in religion and spiritualism. After the Black Plague, people started seeking out Black women of African descent to perform spiritualist activities to contact their loved ones. After 9/11, you have an upswing of the evangelical megachurches. And right now, we are in the midst of this cult of Q, right? QAnon. But we are also finding that in YouTube, you have cult leaders using YouTube as a medium for recruitment. Yes. So if we look at history, we know for a fact that as this pandemic begins to settle in and we start identifying better ways to save people, good ways to save people, which we already have some really great ways, and to continue developing that, there will very likely be a boom of spiritualism and of religion in the coming years. As a person that runs the Hispanic American Freethinkers, what do you feel is your role and the role of other people who run and work, volunteer in these organizations in the coming years for this type of what we can anticipate being a religious or spiritual boom? What are you, go for it.
Yeah, so we know that after it's all said and done, and after the, let's hope and let's say that there's a cure, that there's a way to eliminate COVID and it goes away. Who's going to get credit, right? God will get credit. And where was God when the 250,000 people recently dying? And no, maybe they deserved it. God only knows. The typical questions. So I would say that these people are going to, well, ironically, a lot of these people that have been, some of the pastors that have been against COVID vaccination have gotten COVID, and some of them have died. And so here in the DC area, we've had 3 that died that were against COVID vaccination. So there is plenty of evidence that can show, hey, but of course, everyone's else's religion is fake except yours. And so they'll say anyone that didn't die, that pastor didn't get COVID or whatever, say, that's them. They corrupted. God punished them for not being part of this. And yes, it'll grow again. And the way to fight it is education. The problem, a lot of these problems, I mean, I do a lot of activities that are not related with secularism, but just education, because I know I am doing education. So for instance, through my company, I support a few high schools. We sponsor, we pay for the teams to do cybersecurity training and competition. So because there's a big shortage of cybersecurity people in the country. And so as you educate more and more people, these kinds of issues will be softened. Yes, there's going to be a spike, but if we as a nation are able to increase our ability to educate people, and especially in critical thinking, believe it or not, in philosophy, I mean, who the hell teaches philosophy to anyone? And it used to be taught in a lot of countries, it's taught in high school. In some of the atheist countries that we call the atheist countries in Scandinavia, they teach philosophy in high school, because philosophy is about learning how to think, about logic, and about exactly. So if we could do that, and we need to change the culture from the Hispanic perspective, we need to change the culture that people don't need an education. I've had arguments with parents. I had one father who came one day to school to talk about the son, and he was covered in grease. You could tell he was a mechanic, and he was kind of rolling his eyes a lot. And I was helping translate, and I asked him, "What's the problem?" He says, "This is a big waste of time, because my son is going to turn 16 next year. By the time next year starts, and he already knows all the math and all the language and everything that he needs, because he's going to be a mechanic like me. He needs to be like Dad. He needs to be like me." And so for that man's pride is for his son to be like he was. And I already make a good salary because I make $10 an hour. And how do you argue with this? I with a parent with a girl that was really kind of a cute girl. She was 15, and straight A student, wanted to be a mathematician, wanted to study engineering and work for NASA. That was her thing. And mom says, "Nope, we need money. You need to quit your school, and you need to come and clean offices, because we have to send money back to the old country. And you're going to be married, and your husband, marry somebody with a lot of money, and so your husband will take care of you. You don't need this BS things of looking at the stars. That's stupid." And the only career the mom allowed her to get, if she wanted a career, was to become a reporter. and because the mom had this thing, journalism, this thing, and but today, who's a reporter? Is anyone with an iPhone? I mean, that's why we're in the trouble that we are. You look at all the fake news and all this is because everyone has the power to publish, and no one cares. And a lot of people lie. A lot of people make assume the wrong things. Just yesterday, I saw a video of someone saying, "Here's this police officers beating this black man," and then 2 hours later, the same guy, "Hey, I want to apologize to everyone. Although the guy was black, he was impersonating a police officer and was about to take a young girl, and they caught him in the process of doing that." And so, we often internet has made us jump into conclusions. Oh, I saw it with my own eyes. I saw what without getting the context. Newspapers used to be, you open a newspaper and you wanted to learn about the Vietnam War. There were 7, 8, 10 paragraphs on the Vietnam War of what was going on that one day. Today, USA Today came out and they came out one sentences, and now people just read a sentence and now they've made up their decision. They now are ready to talk about this topic, right, regardless of the topic. And so it's terrible because people just read headlines, and of course, you have your clickbaits that people that they use because that's how they're getting paid, by clicks, and it's sad because that's not an education. That's the opposite of an education. And you get people that the storm here in Washington, that stormed the Capitol because they were misinformed, because they were not educated enough to be able to search for the truth on things, and because they wanted to believe those things. So they got those things all together, and look at the mess that ended up. And it could have been a lot worse. They could have actually gone in and killed everybody. And, it could have been a horrible, horrible thing. Not that it wasn't bad enough, but it could always be worse.
Yeah, definitely. I like to tell people there's nothing wrong with starting your research with a news article, starting your research with a YouTube video, especially if it's well researched and you know the channel, right? Because there's some YouTube channels that you just want to stay away from. But there's always a benefit to going deeper. If the news article references a journal or a report, click on that journal report, do a search for it. Did that news article, did that YouTube channel actually represent the information that was presented in the most honest way? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Now, I wanted to move into, because of your specialty, and I love that your specialty is in information technology and also in futurism, the idea of what will be happening in the future to humanity. So I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit and ask you to talk a little bit about some of the research that you've done in post-humanism, artificial intelligence, and specifically because from the research that I've done, this seems to be a career track that is underrepresented in Hispanic American community. There aren't that many people in STEM. We've had that conversation before, and especially women in STEM is very, very few Hispanic women in the sciences, engineering, and technology. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, your research, your understanding, how you've developed that understanding?
So I'm an optimist in the sense that I believe that we as humans are not going to kill ourselves. Regardless of all the things we see in the news, I think we're going to see a lot of suffering and a lot of, with global warming and with all these other things that are going on, misinformation especially. But I love technology. Here we are talking, people from all over the world. We can see each other, talk to each other, exchange ideas, and all of that. When my mom, when I was a kid, my mom used to tell me that this is the science fiction of her time. Being able to talk on the phone to somebody across the world and be able to see them live, that was just kind of unheard of. And so and let's not even talk about the cell phone. That's anyone 30 years ago that would have said all the things that this thing can do no one would have believed it because this is just, I mean, I opened my car with this to get in the car and to drive it, and I can do, I can summon my car that way and all of that. So it's incredible, all the things you can do with technology. But the problem with technology is it's like all technologies are the same. You can have nuclear weapons, or you can have nuclear energy. You can have, a knife to eat dinner, or a knife to stab somebody. They're all tools, and that's all they are. They are just tools. And the more we know about these tools, the better it should be. The problem is that we look at technology, and you see the Bezos of the world that went from 30 years ago not having a lot, having just a few $1 million to now being, having more money than God. So that, to me, that's the part that bothers me from the humanist socialist point of view. But in my imaginary world, it's the idea, a salamander, cuts off a leg and it grows a new one. Interesting that God chose to give that feature to the salamander and not to a veteran, that lost his legs, defending the nation or something like that. So those technologies to improve our memory, to improve the quality of life, our longevity, and hopefully improve peace among nations, it's how I see it. We know that every technology can be used. One problem, of course, that you hear a lot is, well, all these jobs are going to go away. And you see with the pandemic, a lot of restaurants, for instance, are starting to get more automated, order things, and you can go through a lot of places with all an automation. So, but when you look at people that have loosened their eyesight, when you look at people that are Alzheimer's, that are losing their memory, if we could improve their memory with computer chips, if we can use AI to learn how to solve some of the mysteries that we can't seem to solve, like certain cancers and ALS and et cetera, then it's a good thing. And you do see progress being made in a lot of things. For instance, today, breast cancer, the robots do a 99.99% accuracy versus doctors that are at about 80%. So computers can see better when it comes to breast cancer. They can see better when it comes to facial recognition. And I mean, we use facial recognition a lot when we open our cell phones. Now it's become ubiquitous. And so what for us may be science fiction in a post-human world, and post-humanism really is talking about a world where where technology and humans kind of become one. And so people say, oh, we're going to be like the Borg. We already do that. My dad has 2 artificial knees that, by the way, he enjoys a lot when he's dancing salsa. And he's 80, he's had them for 20 some years and he still does pretty good. People get artificial corneas. I have an artificial seeing device, artificial hearing device right now. We have all kinds of technologies that we implement and put in our bodies, from pills that help with, diabetes or help with all kinds of things, to pills that are going to be more specific to you. Right now, we're at with CRISPR and other technologies, we're right there in being able to deliver and actually change our genetic problems and genetic diseases. Now, will someone use that to make someone smarter, taller, better looking, quote unquote, any of those things? I'm sure abuse will come. But should we stop technology? Should we stop moving forward because of technology? It really becomes, I think, for instance, the abortion issue, I think at some point that'll go away with technology. And when I say eventually, I mean within the next 50 years, whereby you want to have a baby, you don't even have to carry the baby. You can take an epidermal cell, and from there grow in a separate place, grow a baby. And so babies on demand, you can, and then, so what are people going to argue now? That you have to take every. I go in the abortion part, and I never see anyone protesting a one of these artificial insemination clinics where they take one fetus and throw away, 7 others. Never see people protesting there, just where the women are. That's the only place they protest. Anyway, I could just go on technology. Artificial intelligence, I think, will augment our technology. Siri and Google and all of those already kind of do that. And I think eventually at some point, all jobs will probably be taken by technology. We can talk about AI and super intelligence, and that's a more scary dystopian type of thing, which I like to think about and discuss also, but those are deeper topics and more into the guessing part. But when I was a kid, people said, never will a computer beat a human in chess, because the number of moves is just going to, it just explodes. This little thing whips my ass in chess easily. And I paid my first year of college through winning chess tournaments. So there is a lot, technology moves a lot faster. There you got, Moore's law, every 18 months or so, the power of technology doubles. Well, that's a very fast growth, exponential growth.
Definitely. I am also anti-Fermi paradox. I believe that we're going to make it past that barrier. I have optimism. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Humans are pretty cool. We've evolved. Well, we've evolved to specialize in intelligence, right? Yeah. The intelligence to be able to create tools to be able to live longer. And I personally love that. Now, I love that you mentioned CRISPR, and that the fact that we are already in a world, we're already living in the future, right? Yes. Like I say that all the time. I love living in the future. We have a technology that can change DNA so that it can go into our body and fight something. This is how the vaccine was developed, using CRISPR. Now, you talked about the idea that certain jobs are going to be lost because of technology, and that's a fact that we have to accept. We can be like previous generations that when they saw technology moving away from the industry that they worked in, they were told by their governments that you're going to get your job back. The coal industry in the previous administration telling the coal industry, you'll get your job back. But that was a flat out lie, because they knew, the administration knew, and those companies knew that there is simply not a demand for as many bodied workers. So where does that worker go? Do they go to retraining? Do they start focusing on the more higher level sciences? What are your thoughts on that?
So the problem is that there are people that will not be able to train. You can't drive a truck for 40 years and then all of a sudden your trucking job is taken by a robot, and now they say, go learn Java. There are a lot of Java programming jobs. So unfortunately that's going to happen, and every technology in the past, from the steam engine to horse carriages, have encountered the same thing. The people that sold horse whips, they saw their demand for horse whips drop to nothing when the car came out. And so unfortunately, some of those jobs will go away, and the people will be affected. So it's a truism in that sense. But what we also know is that technology so far, and for a long time still, will continue to create more jobs than it takes away. That's why right now, if you look at the population today versus the population, say, 100 years ago in the United States, we have a lot more people. A lot of jobs went away. Horses no longer are main part of doing things, for instance. And yet, here we are. We can, we have a lot more people employed, millions of people more employed. Unemployment right now, I think as of this morning, was like 5.4%, which is amazing. Out of the 380 million people, having all those people hired and working. And in fact, the pandemic has positive things, right? How many of us are working from home and making a living? And yes, it affected a lot of people. A lot of restaurants closed, a lot of personal services. masseuse, whatever, that required physical presence couldn't take the losses from the pandemic, and still you see that there's now. The problem is, what kinds of jobs are we going to have? I hate it when I first got married back in the 80s in Chile. In Chile, they allowed people to put a dime for you when you parked in the street. So you parked, and some guy with a work uniform would put a dime in the parking meter, and when you come back 2 hours later, it said, I put in 5 dimes, you owe me the 5 dimes plus whatever tip you want to give me, and that counted as a job. And so we all know it's a bullshit job, because they're not making. We talk about the poor, the working poor, people that work more than 40 hours and they don't have enough money to live on. So they're working poor. So just having a job doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good job. And that's one of the things that technology eventually, so for the young, they can adapt, they are born with the technology, they kind of take it to the next step. And as you get older, if the older you are in losing your job, the more difficult it becomes in doing it. I think cars will be driving themselves. So just on that one topic, just on self-driving cars, every car company is working on that right now. Every single car company working on self-driving cars. And then some companies that are not car companies, like Apple and Google, they're working on self-driving cars. And so let's say the day comes, which I think is going to be in less than 10 years. It'll come that self-driving cars. In other words, now you're an older person, and you can no longer drive because you're too old and you don't want to drive and deal with traffic, and you get in your car and your car takes you to the opera, or takes you to shopping, it takes you whatever. That's a great thing. The problem is the taxi drivers, the school buses, the driver that drives the garbage truck. There are millions and millions of drivers. Uber, by the way, is working on a self-driving car. So what's going to happen to all the Uber drivers? Well, they'll be let go. They won't be able to make more money that way. Not that they're making much right now, etc. So, and the same with airplanes. I mean, currently today, when you get on a plane today, that airplane is being flown by a pilot for 3 minutes. The rest of the time, it's a computer doing it. And so, and in fact, the computer right now can land, take off, and do everything. They just want to, there are certain things that are more dangerous and they don't want to risk it. But the military, I mean, I work with, some people may hate me with this, but I'm part of the military complex. We're an aerospace engineering firm, and we create things that do that, like planes that land themselves and take off themselves without any pilots or anything. Well, that's really good, because you don't send soldiers into a place where they're going to get killed, kidnapped, or anything like that. You no longer have to worry about cooling and food and all these other things that you have to put in place. And in fact, we already use that when we go to Mars and when we go to other planets. We send robots, we don't send humans. It's a lot easier. And so the same thing over here. Taxis will be the same way, both land and also in the drone way, because computers can do those things pretty nicely. And if you ever want to see the latest in driving, just go to a dealership, where any dealership, they don't know you can't afford the car. If you can't afford it, you just go there and say, I'm interested in doing a test drive in this, and have them show you the features, and you'll be amazed what the car companies have out there. It used to be just keep you in lane, or stopping when there is a car in front, but now they take curves, they take exits, they stop at red lights, they do all kinds of other things, and this is today. So, and again, every 18 months, the power doubles. And the thing with exponential growth is that most humans, you and us, we really can't understand exponential growth very well. And one example that I tell people is, look, if you go 30 feet, if you travel 30 exponential feet versus 30 feet, you can see the difference. And people go, well, okay, so it's a little bit more, whatever. Well, 30 feet is you go across the street. That's 30 feet, let's say. If you take 30 exponential feet, you go 270 times around the earth. That's how big it is. and so that, and that's what doubling does. So every time you see something doubling in a period of time, what we're talking about is an exponential growth that by the time you actually realize it's an exponential growth, is usually too late. That's why the virus has that kind of growth, and that's why the virus was able to take off as fast as it did. It multiplies inside the body at a very fast exponential rate. And so, the technology continues to move that way. For the last 30 years that I've been doing computers, they've said there's a limit. We're going to hit that limit really soon, where we can't double in the speed, and we can't double the memory, and we can't double the storage. And it's been 30 years, and they've been saying that, yeah, we're only going to be doing this for a little bit longer. And now they're at the atom level.
The nanotechnology. Yeah.
Yes, and so, lots of great things in that. I mean, to me, I grew up with the Jetsons. As many young people don't know what the Jetsons are, but yeah, I grew up with the Jetsons, and that was, to me, that was kind of the future I wanted to see.
I'm still waiting for my automated morning where a robot takes me through my hygiene routine and does my exercises for me, and then drops me off with my cup of coffee, because
dresses
Jetsons,
you. Yeah.
Jetsons promised me.
Yeah.
I have one more question, and then I want to open it up to questions. I'm a little bit late on my timeline. My apologies, everyone. But we are going to stay. I asked David how long he has, if he has a hard stop, and he says he does not. So I think he's going to regret saying that. But if you have any questions for him, please start filtering them into the chat. Please raise your hand in the participants chat. You can raise your hand to line up the questions. Jason, I'm gonna rely on you to let me know if there's any questions that have already come in. But I have one more question for you. And it really goes to, in part, the idea that as humans, we are cyborging ourselves, right? We are using technology to enhance ourselves now, no longer just with medicine, but we're implanting things in us that will help us have that quality of life. Being able to dance, salsa until you're 80 years old. That could have been a moment for a person that could have caused depression, that could have led to a physical decline. And so here we are, a new generation of humanity where we can implant things in us to have that quality of life. And to me, we talked about this, you and I talked about this, the idea of, well, where does the soul go? Where does the soul go? If we are cyborging ourselves, where is that limit? Where does this concept of a soul go? And with that, I'd like you to also talk about the book, Se puede saber si Dios existe? Can it be known if God exists? So please, can you share with us your ideas about that?
So I'll start with one of my favorite shirts that we have in Halfree is one that says 98% chimp, because that is, I think I had that the other day when I was talking to you. And usually that, and a lot of religious people agree, yeah, okay, sure, fine, we share 98% of DNA with a chimp, and say, okay, so that means that the soul must live in that 2%, in that little space in there, right? Because I mean, we're assuming there's a soul. And when they start talking about, well, the soul is this and that, and it's the spirit. Okay, so I mean, if you ever go to a zoo and you look at an ape, if you look at a gorilla or a chimp, in their eyes, you see their soul, or you see this intelligence behind those eyes. And so it's one of morality also, because it's the treatment that we give these animals, and how we treat this and so it talks about the self. What is yourself? What is to be you? And we are a bunch of electrochemicals, right, in our brain. And we know that because when you take alcohol, and when you take drugs, and when you take things, it affects your personality, it affects your things, it affects you, it affects who you are in that moment. And so when in post-humanism, you hear about people saying, well, I want to take my mind and transfer it to a computer. But that is very, well, not to say it's impossible, but it's a very ambitious goal, because you are this amalgamation of chemicals that were determined from what you eat and drink to what you've been exposed. Have you been exposed to radiation? You know, did your mom drop you on your head when you're a kid? You know, there are all kinds of things that can affect who you are. And not to mention that, of course, our brains are molded by our own experiences. Were you tortured in the past? And, you know, did you have a happy-go-lucky kind of life? Did you have necessities that were not met, et cetera? And that creates us. And so talking about the self and who we are, well, I mean, the other thing that is important, for instance, you look at yourself and you say, no, this is me and my chemicals and my things, this is me. But every 8 years, every atom in your body is shedded. And so when you look at yourself and you look at the self from 10 years ago, you're no longer the same, but there's no atoms left that are the same. They're gone. And so in general, and so what is it that makes you is really the patterns of how things are connected in your network, in your brain. And we know that because, hey, if somebody takes a scoop of your brain, you're going to be affected, right? You're going to be affected in a lot of different ways, depending on where they took that scoop from. And, you know, which we've seen in accidents and things like that. So we like to all talk about, well, if I were that person, I'd do X, and I can, you know, and you think very like you're unique in that one sense, but that uniqueness can change in a second depending on your chemicals, depending on your things. And we see people do stupid things when they're drunk and do stupid things when they're, you know, oddly enough, we never see people do smart things when they're, you know, when they're on chemicals. I'm waiting for that pill, one that makes you really smart. Anyway, so I forget the second part of your question.
Oh, just discussing the book,
the
Hector
book.
Avalos, yeah.
So thank you for that. I wanted to mention that before. There are two things I want to make sure I talk about before I go. This is one of them. So Hector, when he became an atheist, his whole family was, he didn't know how to tell them. And he wrote a book in Spanish for his family on why he became an atheist. And so he goes through all the different arguments in Spanish. And then after that, Dr. Avalos, who became the head of the religion department at Iowa State University, at one point, he wrote a bunch of books. He was an expert on biblical studies. He had lots of debates with William Lane Craig, with all these big famous people. And he was a brilliant guy, just amazing. And he was interested in the Bible from a historical point of view and trying to determine what was really history, what was not. And he's an atheist. So he's looking at it from an atheist, which I think is the most pure way of looking at it. If you look at Don Quixote de la Mancha as if it was a real book, a real story, or a Sherlock Holmes as if it was real, you're going to look at it through different eyes, especially if you're thinking there's a message there for you. I mean, that's kind of the schizophrenia type of thing, right? I mean, the only reason we don't call it schizophrenia is because it's religion. Otherwise, the symptoms are exactly the same, exactly. After when Hector, so about a year, about almost 2 years ago, Freedom for Religion Foundation asked me to come to do a TV show along with my wife. And we finished the TV show, and as we were walking out, there was Hector. So we're like, hey, Hector, how you doing? And, you know, so he said, hey, go do your show. And they were recording. And so he said, let's meet for dinner. We went to dinner. And when we were at dinner, he received a phone call that informed him that he had brain cancer, terminal brain cancer. And he right there and then said, I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to die on my own terms, so long as I'm not suffering. And, you know, of course, I thought of Dr. Kevorkian, someone who I greatly admire for trying to bring up the conversation of death with dignity, something that we don't talk enough about. And so I told Hector, I told him that I wanted to take out the first book he ever wrote, which was never translated into English, Se puede saber si Dios existe, into audiobook, because there are a lot of people, a lot of Hispanics that don't have the time, or maybe they can't even read or write in Spanish. They can only speak it. And there's very little out there. And when it comes to atheist audiobooks, like nothing, there's, you know, very little. So he said, okay, he said, that's a great idea. He was very honored, and he signed over the rights of the book to us, to Hispanic American Freethinkers. And the book started going like really slow, and he's dying. He's getting, you know, so they gave him 6 months to live. And this was a year later, he was still alive. And so I'm trying to rush things, trying to get it. We got this great actor to do the book. And finally we got the book. And so I went to him and I said, here, I sent him the audiobook, and I said, here's the audiobook, it's done. And, you know, he's the author. I was really afraid that he was going to be very judgmental and how it was done and everything. And his wife told me that he started crying, you know, that he was just he thought it was so good. And that it really exemplified, and the tone and everything was just perfect. And so he died a couple of months after that. So, you know, he good guy. By now, you probably know who I'm going to be talking about at the Dia de los Muertos in November. So anyway, punto aparte. One of the things that I know is running, and I wanted to say one thing that is going to piss people off, but maybe make them think a little. And I want to go back to the Latinx term. So because, you know, we all have opinions about it. Only about 3 to 5% of Hispanics actually use the term Latinx. And but I know that there are some Hispanics that feel that although this is well-intentioned, that it makes Spanish sound a little bit too woke, and that it might be patronizing stereotypes of minority, like, you know, oh, I need to treat you different, and like, you know, I'm not going to treat you as an equal, and, you know, like they're talking down to them. So I've had some people tell me that. The fact is, of course, that Spanish, the language, like many other languages, like Hindi and German and others, things are male or female. So you have la mesa, the table, or female, el océano, the ocean, which is male, and la casa, el árbol. And so I've heard some adults, parents, some of the older generation say, you know, for years I've been trying to make sure my child maintains 2 languages. And this is just bastardizing the language. This is attacking the language. It's an anglicization of the of a word. And you know, if you try to make all the words in Spanish sound neutral, then you're dismantling the language spoken by 500 million people, right? Like I say, I'm going to piss on. I'm not looking at the comments, so I don't know what they're saying in the comments. So from my perspective, I think that there's a lot of ink that has been spilled on the Latinx, and so I think that it's a fucking distraction. I think it's a distraction from the bigger issues that we have, the bigger issues of education, the bigger issues of underrepresentation. I mean, we're overrepresented when it comes to cleaning houses, cleaning toilets, doing gardening and those kind of jobs, you know, flipping burgers. And we're underrepresented when it comes to CEOs and CFOs and executives and PhDs in math and you know, leading mathematicians and et cetera, in a country where we have 60 million Hispanics. And so when we look at this and spend our time looking at this, it's like, hey, look at the little bell over here, while, you know, the whole catastrophe is going on this other side. And so, like I said at the beginning, I don't care what I'm called, so long as I'm called, so long as I'm part of, you know, invited to eat at the table, not beat the dinner. So long as I'm able to be given the opportunity to, you know, for success, the same opportunities that other people are. And that's really what we're talking about here. I'm not talking about special access or special anything. No, just equal opportunity of success. And I am the recipient of equal opportunity. That's why I was able to go to the George Washington University. And that equality came when the Upper Bound program, you know, for every summer that I spent, you know, for 5 years in the summer program, that allowed me to get in George Washington University as a regular student and be able to get my degree there and go on from there. So that's really what we're talking about, is that opportunity of access. And not the photo op. I hate it when people say, "Hey, we need the photo op with the Latino in here so we can say that we are we support Latinos," and then that's it. And you see that in politics all the time, Democrats and Republicans. You look at how many get really given the jobs, considering if we are 19% of the population, I want to see 19% of mathematicians. I want to see 19% of cleaners. I want to see at every level in every profession. I don't think I'm asking for too much.
No, I don't think you are either. I don't think you are either. You're not asking for too much, because it's what I would like to see also. I would like to see more diversity in the upper echelons of corporate America. And I think that I will. There's one question already coming in. People, you all, please feel free to jump in with any questions by raising your hand or by adding it to the chat. Jason is going to filter those through there. And I will say, I knew that there is always something that I don't agree with people that I talk with, but it's okay, because it means that I'm getting a new perspective. And for me, it's the Latinx term, unfortunately.
All right.
I agree that people are making it a distraction, but I think that it's the people that are talking about it that are making a distraction, because for me, there is an evolution in linguistics. There is an evolution of language. When I'm researching 1940s, 1920s Peru, we find this bastardization of the Quechua language by adding Spanish terms into it, right? Words into it. And we have that a lot with indigenous languages, where we're adding English, we're adding Spanish, we're adding other languages. And to me, I use the word bastardization, but I don't agree with that word at all, because humanity is evolution. Humanity, we're going to evolve culturally, religiously, linguistically, physically, as we're adding things into our body. So Suzette, you said it perfectly. The term is another tool to divide us, and unfortunately, yes, it is. It's another tool that is being used to divide us, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. At the beginning of the conversation, I said any term you want to use is perfectly fine. And David, it's okay for you to not like Latinx, and it's okay for anyone else to not like it.
And no, and the reason, again, is that's the reason, because I find it distracting from the more important stuff, like educating the people. Yes, I mean, anyone that reads Quixote or reads Shakespeare will see the language change. Yeah. I mean, it's and it will continue to change. 500 years from now, the people we may not be able to understand them, and vice versa if we were to talk. Definitely.
I think that's why. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's why it's so important to set that baseline of the terms that we can use, because we don't want to get bogged down on one thing that's going to distract from everything else.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that I decided to look at the chat now and risk it.
Go for it.
I saw Margaret, I believe, was asking, I think it's Margaret, asking if the actor that read Dr. Avalos would be part of Secular Day of Dead. I will check with him, but he's a believer. I actually had 3 actors that once they started reading the book, they said no, and they rejected the book. They said, no, this will kill my career. My family won't talk to me if I read this book, and nothing. The guy that finally took it, so I never told him he was the 4th pick, but he's really good. And they're all professional. These are professional actors, voiceover, etc. And I asked him if he had a problem with this, and he said, no, I'm fine. To me, this is just a job. This is just, I'll read it. And now after he read it and I talked to him, he says, I found the book really interesting. It opened my mind to think about things I hadn't thought about. But I didn't push him because I want to use them in the future for other stuff. There are other books that we want to put out. It's just very expensive. So there is no money to be made on this. It's there's only money to go out the window. And if anyone is interested, I'll tell you, no secret, it cost over $5,000 to publish the book. And so you're not, you sell the book for $10 or something along those lines. It's a lot of books you're going to have to sell before you even break even. So the purpose was not that. The purpose was to help educate, knowing also that that's going to be there 10 years, 20 years from now, people, because, that doesn't change. The arguments don't change. Religion doesn't have any new tricks up its sleeve. So that's that. The other question, I think was from Margaret about the Hispanic Congressional Congress. Yeah, so I don't communicate too much with them, although I have to say that I tried for a while, but like all politicians, they don't want, like most politicians, they don't want to be associated with those damn heathens, hell-bound people, and they're very non-committal for everything. And if I want to go see them in person, sure, I can make an appointment. I mean, that was true until about a year and a half ago. You could make an appointment and see it and see them, and they're willing to do that. And guess what? Next time, within weeks, you'll have an invite to donate to their campaign and to donate to their stuff. Money talks, as they say. Yeah. So, but in general, with the Hispanic caucus, not much.
Well, I went with your wife a few years ago to visit the Hispanic Congressional Caucus representative, and I was holding the Secular Day of the Dead toolkit. And I said, I'd like to tell you about the non-theistic Hispanics in America and why this Congressional Congress is so important. And we have started celebrating the Secular Day of the Dead. And she looked at the toolkit and she said, can I have that? And I said, yes, I would love for you to have it, because to me, it was an educational tool for her to understand our non-theist community and how we capture the culture and the beauty of traditions and rituals without religion, and how it can be done and how it is being done. So I looked upon her enthusiasm as enthusiasm to learn. Now I'd like to follow up and invite them to come to our Secular Day of the Dead.
We also have, by the way, in Arizona and other places where we have state senators and state representatives that are atheist. We have Juan Mendez in Arizona, who we all know and love.
I wanted to invite him, but this is his re-election year.
I know.
And I'm very frightened that, if I even count on him saying yes, and I put his name in there, and, I know that it's just trouble for him. So yeah. I didn't invite him, but David, if you think it's worth an invitation.
Well, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him and ask him sort of in private, because yeah, you might be right that there's certain things that politicians, and he's a politician, do or don't do depending on whether it's election, because voters have very short memories.
Yeah,
and
we would love to have him.
Yeah.
So please encourage him to contact me, and we'll put him in a reserved spot.
Yeah,
and we would be so honored.
Excellent.
Excellent. We have a question from Neo. Would you like to unmute yourself, and we will add a spotlight to you? There we are.
Sure.
Hey, Nia.
Hi.
How are you?
So I have a specific question, but I want to give some background because I don't want to intrude or anything. I come from a country called Lebanon, and I witnessed firsthand how sectarianism and religion has destroyed the country via civil war, and then in the recent years destroyed it via corruption. But I also had a long career in Saudi Arabia, and there it's a totally different ball game when it comes to how the impact of religion on society and how women are so much like, I've seen stuff, I've heard stuff that are very, very shocking to a lot of people in the United States. So I moved 3 months ago to the US, and the first thing I want to do is I want to search communities that are like myself, freethinkers, and communities that understand that the impact of religion on societies, but I also want to contribute. So my question is to you, like, how do you start a conversation with someone that is brainwashed, as you rightfully explained, from when they were kids, they are brainwashed to believe. So how do, I mean, I totally get it that the whole world, the whole humanity cannot progress without really kind of injecting reason into the minds of people. And I'm totally convinced of that. So, but how to start? Like how to, you know?
That's a great question. And I think I have a great answer. There's a book by a friend of mine. His name is Dr. Boghossian. He has the title is not good. The title, he didn't put the title. The title was put in by the book printer or whatever. It's called How to Make Atheists. I think it's what it's called. And I can send you the exact link for that. But anyway, the way you start to talk about religion, for instance, to those kind of people that are very religious, I found very useful, is not to talk about religion. Is to talk about other stuff that doesn't sound like religion. But you know, the question that I usually start is, you know, you're sitting having some coffee with a friend that you know is very religious. And you say, you know, how do we know what is real and what is not real? You know, and so you have that discussion, and it's the Socratic method. You're asking questions. How do we? And you could be talking about anything. You could be talking about vaccines. You could be talking about ghosts. You can be something that is not threatening. You know, and how do we know if it's real or not? Why are people that believe and don't believe? And you know what? Should we get evidence for things, kind of thing? You know, and then you ask the question, how would you convince a Hindu that his religion is wrong? And you put sort of on him to tell you what, you know, how to change somebody else's religion. And you can then kind of play the devil's advocate of Hinduism. And it could be any other religion, of course. I'm just picking on that. So you have them do all the thinking. You know, you want them to think, right? And to question, and it's not overnight. It's not going to be, you know, and so on. So the idea here is you're walking them through the path of question you're teaching them in a way how to be a skeptic, and by asking questions, and so it's way in the future when you start questioning some of the more fantastical things of the religion. So, do you really think that Muhammad flew in a horse to Jerusalem, or do you think that's allegorical? And you know, if they're more grounded, say, you know, I think it's an allegory, right? I think it's just an example. It's an example of a dream. It's to get us to think about blah blah blah, right? And then you say, well, now you can ask the question, well, how do we know what things are allegorical versus real? Now I know Islam is different. In Islam, I think everything's verbatim, kind of thing, and so there are lots of nasty things in the Quran, for instance, and in the Hadiths that good Muslims don't do, right? That they don't do. And so you say, so why should we not do these things? And again, is this the question? Not threatening, more like you're ignorant about it and you're just wondering. You have, you know, you're just thinking out loud and letting them sort of give you answers. But again, you can do it without talking about religion, talking about, you know, how do we know that ghosts exist? Or how do we know, you know, how do we know that dogs can't do math? You know, things that are sort of stupid, but at the same time, it gets that conversation going. But the Boghossian book is really a little booklet. It's a little black booklet, not very expensive. That there's another guy, I forget his name, that does what is called street epistemology. And you can Google that in YouTube. And he has hundreds of examples where he encounters people in the street and says, how religious are you? And people say, oh, I'm 95, I would call between 0 and 100, 95. Okay, and he'll start asking some questions, some leading questions. Well, you know, what is, using, in fact, he used Boghossian's ideas. How do we know what is real and what is not? And is flipping a coin to decide what career to pick a good way. So once they say no, of course not. Okay, so how do we got to think, how do we make decisions, and how can we make the best decisions? Obviously, flipping a coin is not a good way. So and you get them to admit that we need to gather evidence, and what are the problems with evidence, and differentiating between evidence and an anecdote. Two very different things, and lots of anecdotes doesn't equal evidence, etc. And, but somebody said this or somebody said that. Well, can those people be wrong? Can you be wrong? Can any of us be wrong? Not that they're being mean or lying or anything, just mistaken. Can people be mistaken? And how do we know if people are mistaken? And so they how more than, they how you get them to talk more. And you'll find that I think people will be more open-minded to reading books, to looking at other things, and there's no hurry. We have a whole lifetime to do it, so you can do that, especially if it's someone you care. Do it slowly, and I've seen that happen with a lot of people, where eventually they come. If anything, they become, like I said, the believers that don't go to church, don't do anything, they don't give money to the institutions, and eventually become more free thinkers in that sense. I mean. We know
that's a one-on-one conversation. How about if someone wants to make an impact on a grander scale?
In a bigger...
of course, I thought of videos and video channels on YouTube, but then I'll be afraid of my safety, to be honest. But
podcasts,
a lot of my relatives and parents.
By the way, there is a good group that I recommend, Ex-Muslims of America. I'm sure you're familiar with them. Based here in the DC area. Mohammed and Sarah are the ones that run that group. So there is an Ex-Muslims of America group. It's a national group, but they're based here in the DC area. And sometimes we do, before the pandemic, we would do picnics together, and their group and ours. It's amazing. You look at the two groups, and no one can tell who's Hispanic and who's from the Middle East. We're all the same people. Don't I look from the Middle East? Yeah, I've been to the Middle East, and it's good because then they don't know I'm a tourist, and people don't try to sell me all kinds of trinkets. So in that sense, it's good. But what I was going to suggest also is you can also, what I've done. I don't have the danger that you would encounter, but under a pseudonym or a fake, have debates online, create a personality and have debates on Facebook. So I do a lot of debates, and I've had a lot of people that have come to me and say, hey, I saw you do a debate with my pastor, and I couldn't believe the stupid things my pastor was saying. And I like to defend what the pastor couldn't do. And I said, sure, let's talk, and we do it in private, so they know it's not. And so it generates the conversations, and then those people eventually, if they lose their faith, then they're like, hopefully like me, they'll get upset and say, I want to do something about it. I want to help. How do I help? And kind of rinse and repeat. So the more free thinkers we have in the world, the better. We see this in nations, the most secular nations versus the most religious nations, and we see the kind of life people have, the quality of life, and the abuse and everything. Because once people are led to believe stupid things, then they can make them do atrocities, thinking they're doing good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Great question, Neo. Thank you so much for bringing that question up. Jeremy had a question, but there's something going on with his audio right now, so I'm just going to read it from the chat. How does a Hispanic community view living in this country, the United States, when a concerning portion of the population is skeptical of their presence? So acknowledging that a lot of incorrect assumptions and stereotypes are often made by that subset of population. So essentially, we're Hispanic, we're living in the United States, and there is a whole lot of racism happening, not just with citizens, but with undocumented people as well. So yeah, what?
So one approach that I use is it's humor. It's trying. So I've done a few presentations, especially to college students, with a little bit of humor. I'll put a slide where there's somebody saying, is he being sarcastic, or is he speaking Spanish? Or demonstrate how demonstrate the racism that we have through some funny clips and things like that, and then you appeal to emotion also. We are a minority. The thing though is that over the next 50 years, there's not going to be any majority. Every group is going to be a minority. And now, with that stop racism, especially, we see the racism amongst the minorities themselves, as I mentioned before. We see, even in the African-American communities, you see darker people having a problem with lighter people and vice versa. You see that in Latinos, you see that in Hindus and people in India. Skin color is a very primitive way of looking at things, and unfortunately we still have that. So that is the something that you can only change, I think, as a child, for children. And we've seen changes. I mean, in Virginia until the early 70s, I believe, or 80s, 1980s, it was illegal for a Black person to marry a white person. Illegal in the law. And so now kids don't think twice. You see kids from different races holding hands and dating and couples, and no one looks twice. To me, that's a big change in a very short period of time. We can do the same way. Again, the younger are easier to there's a reason why religion goes for the young. Baptism and school and catechism and all that is, you get, do that brainwashing early on, it sticks on. Well, maybe if we do the good things also young, they'll go in there. So to me, I think that's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to reconcile it. That's one of the difficulties that I've always had, coming from a family that is half Mexican and half Peruvian, and then growing up in a community that was mostly Hispanic Americans, is you saw the engraved racism towards other communities and towards other Hispanic people. Right now we have people from climate refugees from Honduras that are trying to get into different countries, and America is saying, the United States is saying no. These are climate refugees being put in camps. It's ridiculous. But we have our own people of our own ethnic background supporting not letting people into the country, which is, to me, completely baffling that people who immigrated to a country, Latin and Hispanic people who immigrated to a country, saying, no, these other people should not come in.
I got here first and you can stay out. Now it's my rock.
Suzette, would you like to share about the book that you were talking about, Mental Immunity? If not, Suzette added on the chat and oh, there we go. You're unmuted.
I wasn't expecting this, Michelle.
Sorry.
I just threw that out there because it really, the book, I'm just finding it fascinating. And Andy he's a psychiatrist, and he really brings a lot of really good ways to look at things as far as how do people he calls them their mind parasites. And it's people that believe just the most ridiculous things that actually harm people. And how to reverse that.
I'm sorry, what was the author?
It's Andy Norman.
Norman.
And okay. The name of his book, it just came out. It's Mental Immunity. And it's just brilliant. I'm like a fourth way through it. And I'm learning so much about myself and how I think and what I think and how I think that way. It really gets you thinking, which is the purpose of the book. But he's brilliant, and he doesn't talk down to you. He talks at anybody's level. I don't feel like I don't understand anything he's saying. On the contrary, I'm understanding it extremely well. So it goes right along with what you're saying, David. It really does.
So
to teach people. Yeah.
Great recommendation, especially Neo. There are two other things that I think that I just thought that it might help. There's another book, very small booklet, but I think it's like $5, $6, and it's in several languages, including Arabic, I believe. It's called Why We Believe in Gods by Andy Thompson. He's a professor from University of Virginia. He's a psychiatrist, and he was one of the people that his specialty is in suicide bombers. And he's interviewed a lot of the suicide bombers in Israel who press the button and don't blow up because something malfunctioned. But this is a very small book, very good. And of course, somebody already mentioned the Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan, one of the best books. That's where I mentioned before the Bologna test. He mentions that in there. And then there's one, I think there's still a video out there that I saw some years ago, and I thought it was fantastic. It's called Here Be Dragons. It's an introduction to critical thinking, and it's a video. And I used to burn the video on CDs and give it to students in the high school. So it's called Here Be Dragons. And they might have it on YouTube, which you can recommend. Again, it doesn't talk about religion. It just talks about critical thinking and about examples of things along the same way as Carl Sagan did with his books.
Yep.
What was the name of that book again? I'm sorry, David. The book you mentioned.
It's Mental Immunity.
Oh no, the one that David that you mentioned.
I'm sorry.
Why We Believe in Gods. It's actually God.
in-
Why We Believe in God, parentheses, S, close parentheses, and Andy Thompson, who's local here in the DC area.
Beautiful.
Well, actually, I highly recommend it. By the way, it's in Spanish. The book is in Spanish also. So that's one of the books we want to put in audio also because it's been translated. My wife was the one that did the translation to Spanish. So any problems with that, you can blame her.
And Jason, we have a question from Jason. And I think unless there's any other questions, we might wrap up after your question, Jason.
Thank you so much, David. This was absolutely wonderful hearing about futurism and every single issue. We covered a huge amount of territory, and I like questions that can be prescriptive and really helpful. And since we post these videos on YouTube, and I know we have leaders of other community organizations, considering, as you've probably seen, going out talking to different atheists and humanist groups, the membership generally does not match the demographics in the community. As such, are there any strategies that you would advise to not only make our atheist and humanist groups more welcoming, but strategies to be able to reach more Hispanic Americans? To let them know that we are here, considering, as was brought up before, 20% of Hispanic Americans are now religiously unaffiliated.
Yes. Well, one of the things, it's equal access to stuff. And under the equal access, one of the things Hispanic kids don't get to do is to go to Camp Quest. Camp Quest is expensive. It costs a lot of money to run, and I know this because we started one here in the DC area, and so we try to to get some kids to join and go there and learn about astronomy and learn about science and learn about all these things in Camp Quest. When you do that, those parents become interested in who's this group that sent you there and what did you learn? And the kid, of course, was going to want to come back, and it's going to be great, and it'll open in that. I like not to go the way that churches do it, and where they said, oh, we're going to offer English classes, come over here, and now that I got you here, well, let's pray, let's do this. That to me is switch and bait kind of thing. I think is terrible. I think if you concentrate in the women in the Latino family unit, the woman is really the one that runs things. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, as the saying goes. And so if the mother thinks that the humanists are good people and the humanists have interesting things to do, and if in fact if the mother or the grandmother and the sisters lose their religion, the men will fall right behind. They'll fall in line and they'll, so activities for women, I think that are, might be a good way of bringing in or attracting more. They're the ones in charge. So, the internet. So if you have websites and things of the sort, sometimes people's language skills are not that great. They're afraid, hey, if I go there, am I going to be the only Hispanic? Am I going to be the only oddball out? Is everyone going to be talking about, Mercedes-Benz cars and I don't have one? Are they going to be talking about things above my level, my educational level, things like that? So if there are activities of things, so things that are picnics and, the pandemic has changed a lot of things, but, the activities where you really don't have, that are kind of fun and you don't have to do a lot of other stuff, except show up and bring food. And Latinos like food and music. So those two things are there. You got some pluses in there. And I would say that the last recommendation, let me think, I've written a note over here, is to provide, once in a while, provide perhaps sources, or provide in your website internet sources that if someone is questioning, you put a link and send them to a place where they can get more information. So I'll give you an example. Freedom from Religion Foundation, for them is very difficult. They have a huge website. They can't change the whole website in Spanish, even though Spanish is the second spoken language in the United States. What they did is they have a little section for Spanish, and so they have some pamphlets in Spanish. They have some books on some booklets on abortion and some specific topics, and they just kind of grow there. And anytime they have a link to something that is interesting or that sort of applies to secularism, they put it in there in that little section. And so in one part, this is Hablas Español, and you can click and go to that section. So those are different little ideas. None of them is perfect. None of them, fear of not belonging is, I think, the number one thing. So anytime that someone feels like they belong and they, they're part of the group, then they'll continue to come. If they come in a couple of times and feel like strangers and no one talked to me and I'm, just a stranger among other strangers, they probably are not going to come back. I mean, think about churches, what they do. Somebody comes in and the pastor will come in and, hey, nice to see you. What's your name? And, and all this, and immediately, tell me about yourself. And this is, make him really welcome, and they'll come back. So now in Half-Free, we have also a lot of people that will come in for one meeting, and all they wanted to know is to know and feel that this community exists. They're not interested in participating, not interested in doing things, but they want to know that it is there, and they came and they saw, when you see them recommending it to other people on the website or in social media, that you've done your part in that sense. So I hope that makes some sense.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to give
Mike on the phone, Jason.
One second, Mike. I'd like to give one plug really quick for something that's really important that I don't know if anyone knows about it or most people know about it, but there's an annual Women of Color Beyond Belief conference. It's coming up. It's online, 2 weeks. While it's in Georgia, you can stream it for $25. Our good friend Mandisa Thomas is organizing it. I'm placing the link in the chat right now. So go and support Mandisa and the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference. Mike.
Yes, thank you, David. I'm a recovering ex-Catholic, and I wanted you to discuss racism as it exists between people who claim Spanish heritage versus Indigenous Americans and blended like Mexicans, etc. My sister married a man I thought was Mexican over 50 years ago, and come to find out that he's a racist Spaniard, and his kids are all racist to this day, and even to the extent of not wanting to deal with a Mexican broker, and my brother-in-law was a cop, so he was a racist cop who thought he was superior Spanish. But can you tell us, like, how names may inform us if people are a Spanish racist background, like if they have a saint?
Oops, I think we lost them there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I got the gist of the question. He is absolutely right. There's some years ago, many years ago, my wife and I went to Spain for the first time, and we went to we saw they had a museum of pre-Columbian art in gold. And so my wife went in there. She says, "Oh, watch this." And so she goes there and says, I'd like to come in and see the things. And they said, yeah, it'll be pesetas at the time. It's 20 pesetas, whatever. And she said, no, it should be free because, you guys took all of this from Latin America. You stole it. You brought it here. Now you're going to charge me to watch the things that you stole from my people. How is that fair? And of course, they're not going to let her in anyway. But the point there was that, yes, there was a lot of abuse. A lot of, the Spaniards came and did. A lot of the killing was not necessarily killing murder, but the diseases that they brought in were deadly, to the peoples. What I find extremely funny is that a lot of people in Latin America, especially in the southern cone of South America, Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, they tend to be whiter. And in fact, the Argentinian accent in Spanish is an Italian accent. And the idea, and they look down on the Indians and they look down on other people because they said we're European and we're white. And what's fun is that when they go to Spain, they're not seen as white European. They're seen as, you're just another damn Indian. Even though they may be white, you're from Argentina, you're from Latin America. They look down on you. And that's throughout history. It's been since the 1500s, since the 1400s, that there was a caste system where the European was above, the Indians and slaves and all the other peoples in the Americas. So how do we fix that today? It's racism. It's as difficult to fix as all other racism and all other caste systems, and like they have in India and other places. And sometimes is even when someone knows that or get discriminated, they are okay discriminating other people. Right. And they don't see it as wrong. Oh, it's okay that I discriminate. And I see this in people that go clean somebody's house, for instance, and they're mistreated just because, I'm the supervisor or I'm the one that hired them. And so I get this mistreatment. It's the human condition, is human nature, unfortunately, and is the bad aspect of humanity, is this tribalism that we get at all different levels. And people they're tribal in all kinds of different ways. One person can be tribal in politics, and that same person can be tribal in race, can be tribal in many other ways. And if I had a solution for that, we'd be with that prize that I was talking about before. But yes, absolutely correct.
Mike, do you have anything to add?
I'm sorry, my phone cut out quite before I finished my question, but so I didn't hear all the answer, but
I'm glad we're recording.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, before we wrap up, I would like David to give you the opportunity to talk about what you have going on right now. Where are you going to be? We know about the Day of the Dead event. What are you doing? What do you have coming up that you can share with us?
Actually, it's long, so I don't want to. I'm just going to mention one more thing. I am going to be speaking at the Freedom from Religion Foundation conference conference in Boston in November, and which for me is a good opportunity because my parents live in Rhode Island. So I'm hoping that I can right before or right after. In fact, I'm hoping to invite them and see. Now, it all depends on how the pandemic is going and all of that. I'm very much into safety first. And I did think twice about speaking at the conference. It got canceled last year. And so they're trying not to cancel it again, but we'll see. So yeah, that's the only one I wanted to mention. There's another event in Florida coming up in October, but that's more of a local group in there. And again, we're hoping to get back into the swing of things with schools. And yes, the Dia de los Muertos, that's going to be a lot of fun. It was last year, and I think it's going to be better this year. So I highly and strongly recommend it for everyone to join. We want to push the limits of technology there. See how many people we can get in there.
Yeah, but you know, the Freedom from Religion Foundation is so wonderful. They're co-sponsoring the Dia de los Muertos for us. They're so supportive and wonderful. And David, you being a board member has really made a difference. So thank you so much for being our voice.
And by the way, Dan Barker, the co-president of Freedom from Religion Foundation, he is fluent in Spanish. He was a preacher in Mexico. And so, you know, he loves when we get together because he gets to practice Spanish. And I've actually done podcasts and things with him in Spanish. And he's really good. He's got a...
Well, you know, he gave a wonderful speech last year for the Dia de los Muertos. The name of the speech was Adios, Adios.
Which is goodbye to God. Because that the word adios, it means to God, you know, right. If you break it up.
So you can see his speech. We have a YouTube channel, and you can see the English Secular Day of the Dead and the Spanish Dia de los Muertos.
And he did it in both.
He did it in both.
He recorded in both.
Fantastic. So please look at our YouTube, Free Thought Society YouTube. And David did a beautiful welcome and acknowledgement of, who did you do last year? I can't remember.
Simón Bolívar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So, all right. Well, I want to thank you for having me here, and you know, the opportunity to talk about all kinds of topics that I love. And Michelle, I hope we continue chatting and talking about how to solve some of the issues in the Latino community.
Definitely, and thank you, David, and thank you to everyone who was here today. Because, as we said in the beginning, the Hispanic Latin experience is not one. There is no one experience. We come from different areas, we have different backgrounds, we have different families, we've come to different parts of our lives from different avenues. And so David, your perspective was a fantastic perspective, not just from having come into secularism, but also looking into the future of what humanity might look like in 50, 100, 1,000 years from now, which I think that if we're looking ahead, then we should look ahead. Let's set ourselves up now for success in the future. Thank you, everyone who attended today. I actually, because of the people that I have in the room, I wanted to put out an open invitation to any of you who would like to have a conversation like this at one of our future meetings. My personal goal is to be able to show and represent people from all elements of Hispanic and Latin America and the Americas, Hispanic and Latin Americas, because it's not just one, and which will include Asian Latinos, Afro-Latinos, Caribbean people. As we said in the beginning, we're all one. We all come from a common ancestry. Even those that have immigrated into the Americas, we all can hold on to that ancestry and that human evolution. It's such a beautiful and unique part of human evolution that was completely divergent from the European and Asian areas of the other side of the world. With that, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you for letting me be your host. Jason, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. And I'm going to hand it back over to you to close up our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And David, again, everyone unmute yourselves and show some appreciation for David for such an incredible event. I agree that this is going to be the first of an ongoing dialogue. Thank you everyone for coming in today. Next week, we're talking about the science of being good. And as always, somos humanistas. Thank you everyone. And thank you, Margaret. Adios, adios.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.